Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show and Reason and Theology. Explosive news coming out of the Vatican. Pope Leo the 14th just announced his plan, his vision for the church. He outlined what his papacy is going to look like. And, if you've been a regular viewer of the channel, this probably won't come as a surprise or a shock to you, but if you're new to the channel, this might hit pretty hard, and it might not be what you were expecting and anticipating. Certainly the vast majority of Catholics online probably aren't ready for this, for better or worse. But we're going to cover it today. We're going to go over what the Vatican has just released about the vision of Leo the 14th for the future. What happened? As I told y'all, he was going to be meeting with the College of Cardinals today, and he just did. In the Vatican, met with them, and the Vatican, the Holy See Press Office, just published his speech that he gave to them. We're going to read the whole thing. The first part is a little bit of fluff, but we're still going to read the first part because it gives you some insight into him, gives you an indication and a feel for his style. So we're going to read through the entire thing, and towards the end, you really get to see what his vision is going to be for the church, what you can expect moving forward, and I'll also break it down for you and kind of connect some dots and tell you what you can likely expect from magisterial documents from him moving forward. And so this is massive, and this is not the only thing you need to keep your eyes on. I also told y'all we need to see what his Sunday liturgy looks like. That's going to be a really good idea of what his liturgical piety looks like, although we kind of saw a little bit of his liturgy yesterday. We need to see what a Sunday liturgy looks like for him in St. Peter's Basilica. But also, we're going to take a look at his first general audience whenever that comes about. And that will also give you a feel for what his magisterium will look like. And so those are things that we're looking for. But this was number one on the list because it was the most immediate. I mean, happened today. So we need to take a look at this. This is big. Let me go ahead and share my screen, and let's just read the whole thing. That way you're not getting it from a secondary source. You're not having to take my word for it. No, we're going straight to the source. We're saying what the Vatican says, and that's always important. You want to avoid just going to secondary sources. So-and-so said that the Pope said so-and-so. Avoid that. Go straight to the thing. If somebody's not pulling it up on the screen, reading the text directly to you, you might want to go and do that yourself. Okay, so here we go. Meeting with the College of Cardinals. So he's meeting with all of the cardinals who are still in Rome, right? Some of the cardinals, they're wherever they are in the world, but a lot of them are still hanging out in Rome. He just met with them in the very place where all of the bishops tend to meet for the Synod on Synodality, in that very same conference room. Just met with them. It says, this morning, the Holy Father, Leo the 14th, met with the members of the College of Cardinals, to whom he delivered the following address, followed by a conversation that returned to some of the topics and proposals that emerged during the speeches in the general congregations. The following is the text of the address delivered by the Holy Father. So here it is, address of the Holy Father. Thank you very much, Your Eminence. Before taking our seats, let us begin with a prayer asking the Lord to continue to accompany this college and, above all, the entire church with this spirit and enthusiasm, but also with deep faith. Let's pray together in Latin. Okay, so he's not afraid of Latin. And we already saw that before, right? He had some Latin, in fact, a lot of Latin in the first liturgy that we saw with him yesterday. Somebody pointed out to me the whole thing except like the homily, it was in Latin, so the homily was in the vernacular, everything else was in Latin. Somebody also pointed out that that's what Pope Francis's liturgy was. It was all in Latin. I don't know if that's true. Y'all go double check that. But he's not afraid of Latin, right? He's not afraid of the traditions of the Roman Rite and the language of the Roman Rite, which still is technically Latin. So he says the Our Father, then the Ave Maria in Latin. All right, then, in the first part of this meeting, there will be a short talk with some reflections that I would like to share with you. But then there will be a second part A bit like the opportunity that many of you had asked for, a sort of dialogue with the College of Cardinals to hear what advice, suggestions, proposals, concrete things which have already been discussed in the days leading up to the conclave. So he wants to hear from the Cardinals. He wants feedback from them. What do they want? What is their vision for the church? He wants feedback. All right, so he says, "Dear brother Cardinals, I greet all of you with gratitude for this meeting and for the days that preceded it. Days that were sad because of the loss of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and demanding due to the responsibilities we confronted together. Yet at the same time, in accordance with the promise Jesus himself made to the church, days rich in grace and consolation in the Spirit." You can tell he's been through a lot. I mean, a lot of difficulties, a lot of emotions leading up to this. It's been a demanding time just for a cardinal to have to go through everything that they go through in electing a pope. And actually, Cardinal Tobin was saying that when they were reading out the names in the conclave, and they started saying Provost, his name, they started saying him. He put his head on his hands like this. He was in such stress hearing that, oh no, they might actually choose me to be the Pope. He wasn't expecting it. And he's like this the whole time. And Tobin said he felt so bad for the guy because the weight and the pressure of it all hit him. And he realized, oh goodness, I might actually be made Pope. Am I ready for this? And he said, as soon as he accepted the papacy, just like that, something changed. And all of that stress went away. I just had to add that side note because I thought that was such a cool story. All right, back to it. You, dear Cardinals, are the closest collaborators of the Pope. This has proved a great comfort to me in accepting a yoke clearly far beyond my own limited powers, as it would be for any of us. Your presence reminds me that the Lord, who has entrusted me with this mission, will not leave me alone in bearing its responsibility. I know, before all else, that I can always count on his help, the help of the Lord, and through his grace and providence on your closeness and that of so many of our brothers and sisters throughout the world who believe in God, love the church, and support the vicar of Christ by their prayers and good works. So he recognizes that the successor of St. Peter is the vicar of Christ on earth. And that was actually something that a lot of people were concerned about. They were saying that, with especially the previous pontificate, that wasn't emphasized as much. There were a few times that Pope Francis spoke of himself as the vicar of Christ, but it was pretty rare. So that was kind of a touchy topic. And a lot of people thought, well, maybe the papacy is kind of abandoning that title. No, not necessarily. But here he's reinforcing that idea. So if anybody thought, okay, that the papacy was backing down from it, no, there it is right there in his first address to the cardinal, vicar of Christ. Okay. He says, I thank the Dean of the College of Cardinals, Giovanni Battista Re, and deserves applause at least once, if not more, whose wisdom, the fruit of a long life and many years of faithful service to the Apostolic See, has helped us greatly during this time. I thank the Camerlengo of the Holy Roman Church, Cardinal Farrell. I believe he is present today for the important and demanding work that he has done throughout this period of the Vatican See and for the convocation of the conclave. Some people do not like him, right? They feel that he was implicated in some, concerning matters related to the scandal with Cardinal McCarrick. And so there's allegations, alleged allegations, stuff like that there. So some people weren't really happy with him being Camerlengo, but here he's thanking him for his doing his duties there. My thoughts also go to our brother cardinals who, for reasons of health, were unable to be present, and I join you in embracing them in communion and affection of prayer. At this point, both sad and joyful, providentially bathed in the light of Easter, I would like all of us to see the passing of our beloved Holy Pope Francis in the conclave as a Paschal event. He says a stage in that long exodus through which the Lord constitutes to guide us towards the fullness of life. In this perspective, we entrust to the merciful Father and God of all consolation the soul of our late Pope and also the future of the Church. Beginning with St. Peter and up to myself, his unworthy successor, the Pope has been a humble servant of God and of his brothers and sisters, and nothing more than this. So he recognizes he is the successor of Pope Francis. He thinks of him with fond memories, absolutely loved him. We already know he was very close to him. And so it's got to be a painful time for him to, he's probably still mourning and everything. And he speaks of Pope Francis, a humble servant of God, loved his brothers and sisters. So he has a very high view of Pope Francis. It has been clearly seen in the example of so many of my predecessors, and most recently by Pope Francis himself, with his example of complete dedication to service and the sober simplicity of life, his abandonment to God throughout his ministry, and his serene trust at the moment of his return to the Father's house. Sounds almost like he believes he's already in heaven, right? The return to his Father's house. Maybe that's reading a little too much into it, right? Maybe. Let us take this precious legacy and continue on the journey inspired by the same hope that is born of faith. Question for you. Do you think that he's going to canonize Pope Francis as a saint? I think he will. I believe he will. If not him, his successor. But I actually think that it's going to be him who will. It is the risen Lord present among us who protects and guides the church and continues to fill her with hope through the love poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us, a reference from Romans. It's up to us to be docile listeners to his voice and faithful ministers of his plan of salvation, mindful that God loves to communicate himself not in the roar of thunder and earthquakes, but in the whisper of a gentle breeze, or as some translate it, in a sound of sheer silence. It is this essential and important encounter to which we must guide and accompany all the holy people of God entrusted to our care. All right, we're starting to get now kind of into the meat and heart of it. And then the big bombshell is going to come here in a moment. And these days, we have been able to see the beauty and feel the strength of this immense community, which with such affection and devotion has greeted and mourned its shepherd, accompanying him with faith and prayer at the time of his final encounter with the Lord. We have seen the true grandeur of the church, which is alive in the rich variety of her members in union with her one head Christ, the shepherd and guardian of our souls. She is the wound from which we were born, and at the same time the flock, the field, entrusted to us to protect and cultivate, to nourish with the sacraments of salvation, and to make fruitful by our sowing the seed of the word, so that steadfast in one accord with enthusiastic mission, she may press forward like the Israelites in the desert, in the shadow of the cloud and in the light of God's fire. In this regard, I would like us to renew together today our complete commitment to the path that the Universal Church has now followed for decades in the wake of the Second Vatican Council. Full stop. Full stop. He's in continuity with Vatican II, and he wants to continue to promulgate, implement, and apply Vatican II in the church in union with his predecessors in the post-conciliar period. So, John the 23rd opened Vatican II. Paul the VI closed and further implemented Vatican II. John the First, John Paul II, especially applying Vatican II, Benedict the 16th, and then definitely also Pope Francis. He wants to be in line with that, in union with that. He wants to heavily implement Vatican II. That's the first thing he's pointing to. That's a full stop. Let that sink in. The key to his pontificate will be applying Vatican II. Now, if you're a regular viewer here, that's not a shock to you, right? But if you're new to the channel or you're just kind of mostly looking at what people are saying online, that might be a big deal, because a lot of people were thinking that this would be a pope who would completely reverse things, change things, maybe hit the reset button on the post-conciliar period. That doesn't appear to be what is going to happen here, which is what we already anticipated on this channel, right? Okay. Pope Francis masterfully and concretely set it forth in the apostolic exhortation Evangelii Gaudium, from which I would like to highlight several fundamental points. The return to the primacy of Christ and proclamation. Pope Francis, y'all saw paragraph here, it mentions 11 through like 16, was really, really big in Evangelii Gaudium of proclaiming Jesus Christ in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And there he was building on John Paul II in his footnotes. So what he's saying is we need to carry out Vatican II and apply Vatican II. And how do you do that? One of the most important ways is outlined by Pope Francis in Evangelii Gaudium by proclaiming the primacy of Christ, proclaiming the gospel of Jesus. Okay, that's number one. Then the missionary conversion of the entire Christian community. So he wants to see not just conversion of often people think of conversion for the outside community. He's wanting to see conversion of hearts for people within the church and within the Christian context. That's number two. Number three, growth in collegiality and synodality. That's going to hit like a ton of bricks for some people. Not if you've been watching this channel. You already know he was going to be in continuity with collegiality, synodality, the Synod of Bishops, what Pope Francis was doing there with synodality and kind of opening the church up to a more synodal model. We were already expecting that, but some people were, hoping and thinking that he was going to reverse that. No, he's fully on board with synodality and collegiality. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, actually, the Synod of Bishops in the final document that they put forth, which Pope Francis then promulgated as magisterial, actually defined synodality, but for some reason it slipped under the radar for a lot of people. But synodality basically is working together, getting consultation from others. Instead of the magisterium, especially the papal magisterium, that's the context here, just kind of governing without hearing anyone else's opinion and seeing where other people are at, trying to get a feel for where they're at and letting them have a say in it. And of course, ultimately, the Pope will make the final decision, but only after he hears everyone out. I mean, think of it like this, as a father and head of the household, you could just rule by ignoring your wife and your children. You could try to do that, right? I don't know how well it'll go over, but you could try to do that, right? And just ignore everything they say and just say it's my way or the highway. There's that one model, right? Another model would be, okay, let me hear what my wife has to say. Let me hear her input. Let me hear the input of even the children. Now, I might not agree with it. I might not implement it, but let me at least hear them out and see if there's some wisdom in what they're saying and the angle that they're bringing here, if they have any contributions. If there's wisdom to it, let me incorporate that in my decision. If there's not, I'm going to make my decision based on the wisdom that I have, but I'm still going to hear them out, kind of thing, and receive their input. Think of that as synodality. But it is a little bit more than that. It's that in relation to the papacy, but it is more expanded than that, because synodality also includes, for the Synod of Bishops, that same type of model from the parish level on up. So at the parish level, more inclusivity, more input from the lay faithful at the parish. On the diocesan level, more input from the priests, the deacons, and the lay faithful. And then on the higher level than that, maybe a national level, more input from other bishops, brother bishops, priests, laity, and so on. So it is a model that impacts not just the papacy and consulting others, but pretty much everything from the parish level on up, to make it more inclusive, to hear people. Obviously, the buck's got to stop somewhere. Somebody has to make a decision, right? Maybe on the parish level, it might be the pastor. Above that, it will be the bishop. Above that, with a bishop's conference, it would be either unanimity or a majority with papal approbation. And then, of course, on top of that, ultimately, buck stops with the papacy. Okay, but he wants that model, the model that the Synod of Bishops was putting forward, what we saw with Pope Francis and pushing forward synodality. No reversal here. He's full steam ahead. We're implementing that. Okay. So then, attention to the sense of the faithful, which actually kind of goes hand in hand with synodality. The sense of the faithful, right? Subject that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of, but the whole people of God as a whole, collectively, according to the New Testament, are infallible. Not individually, but collectively. So where are the whole faithful at? We saw the sensus fidelium in the case of the Immaculate Conception, what the Pope did there before he dogmatically defined the Immaculate Conception. What did he do? He polled pretty much everyone. Hey, do y'all believe the Immaculate Conception? He kind of tested the bishops and tested the sense of the faithful. And since it was so clear that, yeah, pretty much everyone in the Catholic Church believed the Immaculate Conception already, he's like, all right, fine, boom, we're making it dogmatic. Okay, that was an example of the sense of the faithful. But here he's pointing to the sense of the faithful, especially in its most authentic and inclusive forms, such as popular piety. So he's going to be looking for popular piety among Catholics. What are some popular devotions among the lay faithful? Not just regionally, not just locally, but on the whole. Well, I can tell you one right off the bat, the rosary, right? That's pretty universal. You even got Eastern Catholics who pray the rosary. So that's a really good example of popular piety among the Catholic Church and among the faithful. But he's looking for that. He's looking to that, and he wants to include that. Then he says, loving care for the least and the rejected. That's very Pope Francis, right? Reaching out to the marginalized, reaching out to people that are marginalized in society. Who did Pope Francis deem to be marginalized? The immigrant, those who held to deviant sexual lifestyles. So we've seen already in the poor, by the way. I mean, that was a really big one for him, right? The poor, the immigrant, the poor, deviant lifestyles, people who are kind of outcast because of that. He says, reaching out to them, loving care for the least and the rejected. So, if you loved Pope Francis and the way he reached out to the immigrant, the poor, and people who are in same-sex marriages or stuff like that, you're gonna love this then, right? If you hated that, well, you're probably gonna have a difficulty here. But he wants to continue that. He wants to carry that out. He wants to reach them with God's love. He wants to reach them with the message. Then courageous and trusting dialogue with the contemporary world and its various components and reality. So dialogue. So this is going to be not just ecumenism, which technically would be between Christians, right? Non-Catholic Christians and Catholics, but also dialogue with other religions and dialogue with the world itself. He wants to carry out that notion of dialogue. Where did that originate? Well, it didn't originate from, but where was it highlighted, especially in the most contemporary period? In Vatican II. Vatican II called for that dialogue, not only for ecumenism, but for dialogue with other religions. You see that in Lumen Gentium and other documents specifically dedicated to that. You got a number of things, Vatican II, highlighting this point. He wants to carry that out. So you're going to see him dialoguing with Jews, dialoguing with Muslims, dialoguing with Buddhists, dialoguing with Hindus. And you'll also see him dialoguing with other Christians, right? Eastern Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, Protestants. There will be dialogue there. What's the goal of that dialogue? According to John Paul II, the goal of that dialogue is to bring them to the truth. That's the goal of it. Sometimes I think in reality and practice, the church has lost that vision to where it became dialogue for dialogue's sake instead of dialogue to bring them to the truth. Might he alter that? Might he adjust it? There's some indications he might, but he will dialogue nonetheless, right? And then it references, of course, Vatican II Pastoral Constitution, Gaudium et Spes, among others. So he is already right off the bat wanting to implement Vatican II, continue Pope Francis's legacy. So, I mean, if there's nothing else you take away from what we've seen so far, what is his vision for the church? Let's push pause on before we read the rest. What is his vision? Whether you like it or not, whether you agree for it or not, his vision is apply Vatican II, implement Vatican II, continue Pope Francis's legacy. Comes not as a shock to viewers of RNT. I already told y'all, whoever is elected, that's what he will do. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, that will happen. Here we go. All right, so he continues. These are evangelical principles that have always inspired and guided the life and activity of God's family. In these values, the merciful face of the Father has been revealed and continues to be revealed. In his incarnate Son, the ultimate hope of all who sincerely seek truth, justice, peace, and fraternity. Now, here he's quoting from his predecessor, Benedict the 16th, Spes Salvi, and Pope Francis. Okay, so he's quoting from both of them. So you can already tell he's deeply rooted in Pope Francis, deeply rooted in Benedict, perhaps even in some ways liturgically, deeply rooted in John Paul II. You can already see that right off the bat. Sensing myself called to continue in this same path, I chose to take the name Leo the 14th. So why did he say, I want to be Leo the 14th? Because he wants to write 90-something encyclicals? No. Although that would be interesting. Leo the 13th was the most prolific in nature when it comes to writing encyclicals. Why did he take the name? He says there are different reasons for this, but mainly because of Pope Leo the 13th in his historic encyclical Rerum Novarum. He addressed the social question in the context of the first great industrial revolution. Full stop. We already knew this, right? Why did he take that name? Is it because he loves Providentissimus Deus and his initiation of biblical studies? Is it because he loves Aeterni Patris and his emphasis on Thomistic philosophy? Or is it because of Rerum Novarum? Because of his emphasis and contribution to Catholic sociology and the Catholic understanding of the social question of sociology? What is going on in society? How does the church interact with society? What are its social policies? We knew it was the last option, right? Rerum Novarum. And I'm sure he appreciates everything from Leo the 13th, but we knew his main emphasis and reason was going to be because of the social agenda. How did we know that? Because we already knew that as a cardinal and also as a bishop, he was strong on questions of society. We already knew that, much as Pope Francis was. So that's why he chose the name. He says, in our own day, the church offers to everyone the treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution into developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. So what does that tell you? Here's a very key insight before we finish the last paragraph. Massive insight into him and what you can expect in the future. Not only implementing Vatican II, not only continuing Pope Francis, but continuing the post-conciliar path of social justice and the social question, social topics. So immigration, how to deal with that. We already know his position on that. He opposes the current administration in the United States on that. On, Trump, J.D. Vance, he's been very public in opposing the current administration. So immigration, poverty, those are going to be big things he's going to focus on. So can you expect him to highlight these things in his magisterium? Absolutely. Can you expect encyclicals? Can you expect encyclicals, apostolic exhortations, motu proprios on this? Yes. Yes, you can. General audiences, papal homilies. What are they going to look like? What's going to be their emphasis? It's going to be implementing Vatican II, continuing Pope Francis's legacy, addressing social questions in society, the burning questions of today. He'll talk a lot about political issues, just as Pope Francis, his predecessor, did. You can expect more of the same there. I do, however, think you can expect a little bit more clarity from him. Canon lawyer, mathematician, he's an analytical thinker. He's going to speak more clearly than Pope Francis did. He'll probably be better with the media. He'll be more articulate, more defined, more refined, less ambiguous, less confusing. So what you're likely going to get is Pope Francis, but more articulate. Not that he was just inarticulate, but we know he struggled with communication in some ways. Not just because of the language barrier, but because of that Jesuit training of his. That's just kind of how they trained most recently a lot of their members in the Society of Jesus. He doesn't have that. He's an Augustinian. and he's a mathematician and a canon lawyer. He's going to be more precise. So in other words, you're going to get Pope Francis 2.0, but with a little bit of higher liturgical preferences and also more clarity in its articulation and probably less media controversies. That's my guess. That's my read based on what I'm seeing here. Okay, now let's wrap it up here. Dear brothers, I would like to conclude the first part of our meeting by making my own and proposing to you as well the hope of St. Paul VI. So look at this. All of his post-conciliar predecessors, he's pointing to them, expressed at the inauguration of his Petrine ministry in 1963. May it pass over the whole world like a great flame of faith and love kindled in all men and women of goodwill. May it shed light on paths of mutual cooperation and bless humanity abundantly, now and always with the strength of God, without whose help nothing is valid, nothing is holy. May these also be our sentiments, to be translated into prayer and commitment with the Lord's help. Thank you. All right, so this is historic. That outlines his papacy. That outlines everything you can expect moving forward. There it is. So once again, recap what we saw so far for some people who are just now tuning in. And by the way, if you're just now tuning in, you need to hit that subscribe button. Hit the sub button. I would really appreciate the support. Hit the like button and share this with your friends on social media who would find this to be clarifying and helpful. To recap what we saw, he says to his brother bishops, especially in the College of Cardinals, in his first official address, he outlines his plan and his agenda for his entire papacy right here. And what was it? Number one, continuing and implementing Vatican II. Number two, continuing the legacy of Pope Francis. How so? In the proclamation of the gospel, in reaching out to people in the margins, and emphasizing social issues, and reaching out to the poor, the immigrant, the marginalized. Number three, dialogue. Dialogue with people outside of the church and inside of the church. Number four, conversion of hearts even within the church, helping people within the church become more godly. That's what we're seeing here. Number five, also, getting a sense of the faithful. Where are people at, especially in their liturgical and popular piety? I think that what you're seeing here is going to dictate what everything else from this papacy looks like. His papal audiences, his homilies, his encyclicals, his motu proprios, the way in which he handles the Synod on Synodality. That was another one. That was a big one. Collegiality and synodality. 2028, there's going to be a continuation of the Synod on Synodality as determined by his predecessor, Pope Francis. Full steam ahead with that one. He's all on board with collegiality and synodality, which we just defined earlier in the show. If you didn't see that, hit the rewind button. That's what you can look forward to here. So what that means, net sum here, if you loved Pope Francis, I think you're going to love him. If you hated Pope Francis, I think you're going to hate him. If you were somewhere in the middle, I think you're going to be somewhere in the middle here. If you are offended, however, by Pope Francis's liturgical preferences, you'll actually probably like him a little bit more, because he is certainly a step up. He's a lot closer to Pope Benedict when it comes to liturgical preferences. Will that translate into him reversing Traditionis Custodes? I doubt it. With the high view that he has of his predecessor, I doubt very seriously. But I do think that he will be more open to the Latin Mass. So at the parish level, when a case comes to Rome and they have to review it, do we continue it or not? I think he's going to, on the whole, say, yeah, go ahead and continue it. Unless there's a real problem here, unless there's a real issue, I don't think he'll restrict it further. I think he'll just kind of let things be the way that they are. But if something comes up, okay, let it continue. And in rare cases, you might see him restrict the Latin Mass, but I don't think it's going to be very common. So I think he's going to be a little bit more lax, a little bit more open, but I don't think he's going to do like a full reversal and implement Latin Masses worldwide everywhere. I don't think you're going to get that, but I do think you're going to get a step up from his liturgical preferences, the liturgical preferences of his predecessor. I think that's already clear from just the first Mass that we saw from him. Is he going to reverse Pope Francis's magisterium? Not at all. He's going to full force implement it and continue it. And so his magisterium, his exercise of the papal magisterium, he's going to have in continuity with his predecessor. So if you wanted a full-blown reversal, you will be disappointed. If you wanted any kind of reversal, you'll likely be disappointed. If you wanted a continuity with Pope Francis's magisterium, you will be enthusiastic. You'll be very happy. This is big for a lot of reasons. Let's talk briefly about how this will impact some people in the church, right? I think for the progressives, he will not be progressive enough. They will not be happy with him. They weren't happy with Pope Francis, the progressives. I think they'll be even less happy with him. We do know that he, based just on what we've seen before and what we've seen so far, he kind of leans progressive in some areas, right? But I don't think he'll be progressive enough for the world and what they're wanting, or for the progressive Catholics in the Catholic Church and what they're pushing for. I don't think that he'll give them what they want, right? So I don't think he's going to say, hey, you know what? Now same-sex acts are okay. Transgender surgeries are okay. I don't think you're going to get that out of him. That's not going to happen. You didn't get that with Pope Francis. You're not going to get that here. Will he continue something like Fiducia Supplicans? Yes, he will. He already is in continuity with blessings for same-sex couples. He had some reservation in applying them in Africa, where the African bishops are saying, hey, it's illegal to be homosexual here. So by even doing this, we're putting these people at risk. And he's like, okay, fair enough. All right, you might not be able to apply that here, but elsewhere, you got to apply it. So he's going to be on board with Fiducia. He's going to be on a board with Amor Laetitia, because he's going to see the divorced and remarried as the marginalized, as Pope Francis saw them. And we see he wants to reach out to the marginalized. So you're not going to get a reversal there. I think you're just going to get a continuation. So for people who were looking for that reversal, they're going to be upset. But again, the progressives, back to them, are they going to be on the whole happy with him? I don't think he's going to be progressive enough for them. He's somewhere in the middle. He's kind of a centrist, which is, I'm sure, what the Cardinals were thinking is needed to kind of balance things out. Someone who's in the middle, not too much to the left, not too much to the right. For liberals, he'll never be liberal enough. For traditionalists, there's a lot of varieties there, but for some, he won't be traditional enough. They'll feel he's a little bit better and a little bit more tolerable liturgically. But when it comes to his magisterium, they're not going to be happy with this. They're not going to be happy with a lack of a reversal of Amoris or Fiducia or the death penalty. He's going to continue all that. He's going to say the death penalty is inadmissible. We already know his perspective on that. So for people who wanted to see that reversed, people who thought that's heretical, he's going to continue with that. Also, whenever he meets with other people of other religions and dialogue, has a dialogue with them, maybe even prays alongside of them, as Benedict did, as John Paul II did, as Francis did, going into mosques and praying in mosques. You remember when Benedict did that? Remember when Francis did that? Going into synagogues. You remember when they did that? Some of the post-conciliar popes. Or John Paul II, remember he brought Buddhists, Hindus, snake handlers, pagans, shamans, witches, everything that you could think of under the sun. Muslims, Eastern Orthodox, Protestants, you name them, they were there. And he brings them all together and they all pray for world peace. You remember that? Assisi of 86. And then Benedict did his own Assisi. Remember that? Okay. And Francis did same thing, right? Because this is according to their understanding, this is an implementation of what Vatican II was calling for when it comes to dialogue. So whenever he does that, whenever he accompanies other religions, dialogues with them, maybe even prays with them, how do you think the traditionalists will respond? Well, very critically, right? So I think for the traditionalists, he won't be traditional enough. For the progressives, he won't be progressive enough. But for people who are not kind of on those extremes, but people who are kind of in the middle, they'll be on the whole satisfied. That's what I'm thinking. Which is what it seems to have been with Pope Francis, right? I mean, you have loud voices on both sides who are very critical of Pope Francis and the previous pontificate, but the majority of people were kind of somewhere in the middle. That's what you'll have here. All right, so this is what you can expect. This is clearly, he's breaking down to you what you can look forward to. He's giving you some signals here. So, I mean, this is massive, y'all. I, of course, want to hear from y'all. What are y'all thinking? Put some answers there in the comment section. Put them to @Reason and Theology. I want to hear from y'all. AJ says a unifying pope is good. That's his plan. I think that's what the Cardinals were going for. They wanted a unifying pope because they know that there is some polarization in the church. There's some divisions and factions in the church, and they wanted to kind of bring a balance. They didn't want something too far one way, too far the other way, something in the middle. Josh V says, I think this is a good papacy. Lucas says, let's pray for Pope Leo the 14th. Eric says, we get the Pope we need, not the Pope we want. And I'm fine with that. Jamin asks, Michael, are you on any side, or do you not really mind and just trust God with the church direction? Well, you know, as I've outlined my views numerous times on this channel already, but just to kind of recap, what I think and what I want doesn't necessarily translate into what a bishop or a cardinal or a pope thinks and wants. I think more church discipline is needed, and especially among disciplining radical progressives, you know, promoting LGBT masses and pride masses and stuff like that. That stuff has just gone on too long, and the popes have allowed that to go on, and I don't know why. Or really bad liturgical abuse in the Novus Ordo. That has been allowed to go on for too long. There needs to be more church discipline there. I don't think that you're going to find Pope Leo the 14th to be very strong in church discipline. You know why? Because as cardinal, he had some concerning appointments, right? And didn't come across as somebody who is big into church discipline, unless he profoundly changed overnight. Possible, but unlikely. You know, I don't think that he's going to be really big into church discipline. And that's kind of a key characteristic of the post-conciliar period and Vatican II itself. Vatican II itself, back to the opening speech of John the 23rd at Vatican II. Let's get away from anathemas. Let's get away from condemnations. And let's dialogue more. Well, okay, I can kind of understand that in some cases, but in other cases, you need to anathematize. In some instances, you can't dialogue with some people because they're not of goodwill in some cases. People who are of goodwill, absolutely. Dialogue with them all day long. People who are not of goodwill, they're there to make problems. And you continue to dialogue with them, you let them take advantage of you and the church. That's when you need to bring out excommunications. But we already see kind of the whole idea from the jump with the post-conciliar period, going back to that speech, opening Vatican II, it's to kind of get away from excommunications, get away from those things. I don't think that's very helpful in some cases. In some cases, sure, be patient with them. Don't excommunicate them all the way and immediately. Of course, give them an opportunity. Of course, dialogue. In other cases, people who are problematic and troublemakers, get them out of here. Are you going to get that with this pontificate? Likely not. So what I want, what I think doesn't really matter because it's not what you're likely going to see. What more matters is where are they at? Where are the bishops at? Where's the Pope at? Because they're the one with all the power and authority, and they're the one calling the shot, not me. So doesn't matter what I think. Sir, Mini-Me says the German bishop's got to go. That will be interesting. I don't think that he's going to excommunicate an entire Episcopal conference. I think what he's going to do is try to accompany them and say maybe tone it back a little bit, dial it down, like Pope Francis was trying to do with them. And now that they jumped the gun and went full on in the period where, before Leo was elected and after Pope Francis died, they took advantage of that and just kind of went full on. I think he's going to ask them, hey, you guys, y'all need to kind of tone it down. Can't do this, can't do that. And if, the German bishops don't back down, you think he's going to excommunicate them? I think unlikely. I think he's going to just continue to try to work with them, and it'll be more of the same there, right? Replacing an entire Episcopal conference is certainly a challenge, but you can only dialogue for so long with people who are not of goodwill and people who are not Orthodox, people who are heretics. Very clearly, we see a lot of material heresy coming out of the Episcopal conference of the German bishops. Some of them, whether they're formal heretics or not, the popes will need to, the Pope will need to make a decision here. But certainly looks like there's some serious problems with some of them. With people like that, you can only dialogue so much, right? Okay. Will we ever have a full-blown traditional papacy or council again? Don't even talk about a council right now. It'll be the worst thing for the church, and not because of the council itself, but because of the council as portrayed by the media. It was already a disaster the way the media portrayed Vatican II versus how Vatican II actually was. And that was in the 60s. Can you imagine today with Twitter and social media? Do you know how much misinformation would be spread about that council? So the only people who would actually know what's going on are people who are there and paying attention to what's going on. So don't even talk about a council anytime soon. But getting back into, a full-blown traditional papacy depends on what you mean by traditional papacy. What do you mean by that? A lot of people are going to say the post-conciliar period is traditional. Others are going to say, no, it's not traditional enough. And what they mean by traditional is pre-conciliar. I don't think you'll ever have something pre-conciliar. The church is never going to say we're going to abandon Vatican II. Not in theory. They might stop implementing some aspects of it. You've had plenty of cases where an ecumenical council was no longer effective and the church stopped implementing it. You might have that at some point. But it'd still be on the books. It'll still be there. They're not going to repudiate the council. I mean, that has been done in a few cases with a few ecumenical councils where they were maybe considered ecumenical at first and then downgraded to a local council afterwards, and they're no longer considered ecumenical. That has happened in a few cases, but it is pretty rare. That would definitely not happen with something like Vatican II, where you have the majority of the bishops in the world having been present at. And so, yeah, that ain't happening, especially with how much it's been implemented in the post-conciliar period. You might eventually get to a point where, okay, implementing it is no longer effective. It's no longer applying to the situation today. We need to take a different model. When will that be? It won't be in your lifetime. I tell you that. It will not be in your lifetime. Maybe if a century or so, maybe 2 centuries, maybe then. But I mean, none of us are going to be alive to see that. Okay, what else we got here in the chat? How long will this papacy last to solidify Francis's legacy? Well, I don't know. He's 69 years old, so he's got 10, 20 years ahead of him, right? So maybe not as long as JP2, but maybe somewhere around Pope Francis or a little bit more in his pontificate. I think he's going to be around for a while. He looks young and he looks like he's healthy. So I think he's going to be here for a while. If you're expecting him to get out of the picture and to stop implementing Vatican II and Pope Francis, well, I would just say don't hold your breath, right? And I would also say don't hope for somebody to die, right? That's wrong. I know some people were hoping Pope Francis, hoping for him to die when he was in the hospital. And that was such a horrible thing to see people doing that. And I would say don't do that here either, okay? That's not the way. What else we got? Drololo says, I agree 100% with you. Give these German bishops a chance, but excommunicate if necessary. Yeah. Look, they should have been excommunicated already. They've already been given chances numerous times. Numerous times. We're past the stage of chances, right? Yes, of course. Initially, they needed to be given a chance. Of course, of course, of course. We're way past that. By the way, in an hour and a half, I am giving a 2 lectures on the magisterial difficulties, exploring the tensions in the documents of the church. We're going to go over tensions in documents of the church on outside the church there is no salvation, death penalty, slavery, and religious liberty. Tensions there and potential ways to harmonize them and reasons why some people think that there's contradictions there. We're going to talk about all of that, but that's literally in an hour and a half. If you want to be part of those 2 lectures as well as the Q&A, you need to go to rtcourses.com. R as in reason, T as in theology, courses.com. And when you go to rtcourses.com, you will see magisterial difficulties, exploring tensions in the documents. Click on it and go ahead and purchase the course. By the way, if you can't attend it live, once you purchase the course, you'll always have the recording because it will be recorded and it will be there. So if you can't attend live, that's fine. But if you want to attend live to be part of the 30-minute Q&A after the lectures, you need to go ahead and do that. That's in an hour and a half. By the way, also, Monday, I am starting over my program with Catholic Polytechnic University, where I'm offering a magisterial studies certificate program. You have just enough time to sign up for that as well. If you want to learn about the magisterium and get formal training and a certificate in magisterial studies, if that's something that you want to do, or you don't want the certificate, you just want to take the introduction to the magisterium course, which is the first of 3 courses for the program. This starts Monday, or restarts Monday. We already had a round of graduates. Congrats to all of y'all. And now, for those of y'all who want to get from a Catholic university formal training in the magisterium, you need to sign up now. You'll go to catholicpolytechnic.org/magisterium. So Catholic Polytechnic University, go click on the certificate program on the side, click on magisterium, and it comes right up. We're going over the Old Testament roots, New Testament roots of the magisterium. Who teaches? What is taught? How are they taught? I have a guest lecture with Dr. Robert Fastigi, who covers the question of dissent. Non-infallible teachings and church disciplines. How do those work? The theological notes for those of y'all who have been studying the manualists in the preconciliar period. Evaluating magisterial documents. How do we determine what is magisterial, what is infallible, what is not? What is binding? What is not? How much is it binding? Reversals. Can the church contradict itself or reverse itself in church discipline and doctrine? And all of that is in the Intro to the Magisterium course. We got 2 other courses where we explore all 21 ecumenical councils and major papal encyclicals. And then in the 3rd course, we go over evaluating magisterial documents. We go through a lot of documents. We evaluate them. Is this infallible? Is it not? Is it binding? Is it magisterial? Is it not? Documents from the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century, and so on. And yes, there are some documents from the 1st century that are not part of the New Testament. Didache, for example. So all of that, you need to go to catholicpolytechnic.org/magisterium, and you need to click here to register at the bottom. By the way, I put the link there in the chat. You need to go and register now because, again, it starts up once more on Monday. So click here to register. After you register, you need to pay the tuition fee, and that's with the PayPal or Venmo link here. So register, then make sure to pay. You have just enough time to sign up for that starting again Monday. If you can't be part of the lectures every Monday, that's fine. They are recorded, so you can then watch it at your own time. It's not going to be demanding and workload or anything like that, because this is designed for people who have a day job. They have a life. They got family. They got stuff to do. This is not meant to overwhelm you. And you're not bound to attend it on Monday, where it would be great if you can, because you can ask questions and all that. But if not, you can still watch the lectures and email me with any questions, or we can meet or something and talk about it. But you got just enough time to still sign up. Catholic Polytechnic University. So catholicpolytechnic.org/magisterium. And then again, in an hour and a half, I'm going over 2 50-minute lectures. Actually, they'll be longer than 50 minutes. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm giving you more bang for your buck. Those of y'all signed up, it'll be a little bit more than 2 50 minutes. I underestimated my PowerPoint presentation. Um, you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation to lectures on magisterial reversals, magisterial difficulties, and exploring some difficulties and potential harmonizations between them. Um, that's coming up in an hour and a half, and there will be a 30-minute Q&A at the end where you can ask any question that you want via video. So go ahead and sign up now. You have just enough time. I'll keep a look for any of y'all who are, just now signing up, and I'll add y'all to the link so that y'all can join. You'll just look for an email once you sign up, or once you hit the buy now, you'll then have access to the join link. If you just look at the bottom, it says click here to join. Once you sign up, you'll have access to the stream link, so you can join live, or you could purchase it and just watch it later because it will be pre-recorded and added here. So rtcourses.com, magisterial difficulties exploring tensions in the documents of the church. So y'all need to check that out. All right, I have to go prepare for that now, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end the stream, and I'll be back later today, most likely this evening, for an evening show. So more updates on the new Pope Leo the 14th. So stay tuned for more. If you want to be in line and in tune with what's going on in the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and also consider supporting the channel financially. Great way to do it is patreon.com/reason and theology. Really would appreciate and need that support. This is how I provide for my family. So if you would like to continue to see free content like this on the channel, I need y'all to step in and consider offering support. You'll hear Boxer in the background, probably upset at the mailman or something. Anytime somebody walks by, he's just flipping out on them. But yeah, consider supporting, especially on Patreon. You get access to exclusive content, or hit the join button right next to the sub button right here on YouTube. But that's a great way to help me out so I can continue to do what I do right here on this channel. All right, hit the sub button, hit the like button. See y'all later. God bless.